Hello, my name's jfitton3. I'm going to do a public lecture review on Michael Schatz, Forecasting Turbulence. And so basically we went to the lecture and he talked about forecasting turbulence, specifically in fluid turbulence. But as far as learning things I didn't know in that lecture, there were a lot of really interesting things that I learned. So one of the big things was just the true power of turbulence and what can come from such a simple event that can cascade to become something so much more. I read more into it after the lecture, and there was a theory that a butterfly's wing beat could technically create a tornado across the world somewhere else, and it's an insane idea to me, and it blows my mind, but it's very interesting to me. And so I also was unaware how chaotic turbulent flow really is and how hard it is to predict the patterns within it. And so when he started getting into how they had it with the testing they started to do, it was really interesting to see how complex it can become and how complex of a problem it is. And I understand now why it's such a problem and still remains to this day unsolved completely. So, and as far as things I already knew was really pretty much nothing going into that lecture. It was all new material to me except for knowing the basis of the basis of the turbulence in general, the basic knowledge, the fact turbulence is just an unsteady movement of air or some fluid where the velocity and pressures can change dramatically in a short amount of time. But other than that, really, it's just all new knowledge, and it was very cool to hear such an expert on that specific field to talk about it. And as far as in the lecture, there's some things I was especially interested in, which was the experiment he talked about that they conducted. And it was just, the reason it was so interesting is because there's a lot of stuff that I can apply from my physics 2 class that we're taking. When he started talking about the cross product of the current and the magnetic field to create the force that they needed to, based on the diagram that I saw in their article after the lecture. It was really cool to see, literally I just learned that in physics and just applied that to similar problems, and so that was very cool, and it made me a lot more curious on the topic and how they use that in their experiment for the electrolytes and inducing those forces using magnets and create a magnetic field. So that was very cool. And so I think this definitely relates to my study just based on simply that the physics 2 similarities there are very prevalent, and so it's very cool to see the stuff I'm learning getting applied to actual field studies and physics studies that are being research done here at Georgia Tech. And also I saw other classes I'm taking as well present in the lecture, like thermodynamics, dynamics, deformable bodies, because it's working with fluids. So all those classes also apply, and it's very cool to see my own personal study being so frequently used in that lecture. And then so obviously I followed up after lecture because I went and read the actual article that they published. I forget what the website was, but it was a very interesting article. I was glad I went and looked at it because it goes in a lot more detail on different things like the experiment itself and really describing the immiscible layers that they used to create that force and to induce the magnetic field in those, and to then study the patterns. And it was very cool, and the diagrams in the article were really helpful too, to get an idea of what they were discussing in the lecture, or what he was discussing in the lecture. There was also calculations that they showed in that lecture, there was a Navier-Stokes equation. It was also obviously very hard to understand because I never learned that or anything close to that complex, but it was cool to actually see the equations themselves, and they showed the change in flow equation as well that actually did help make me understand a little more. So it was very cool to follow up and get to learn such an interesting topic about fluid turbulence from such an expert in that field. Thank you.